Hi, folks. Thank you again for coming on to Back to Basics for Season 3. Today, we're going to speak with Chris Miles. Chris Miles is a person, he talks about finance, he talks about the broken system, he talks about the money ripple and the ripple effect. And that's what we're going to be talking about. That why is it broken? Is it broken? How should we fix it? Those are the things that we all talk about during the crisis time that we're going through right now. Now the question is, how do we get away with it? Or do you want to get away with it? So that's what Chris is all about. So let's speak with Chris to get to know him better on Back to Basics. I'll see you there. That's really crazy. I haven't recorded for a long time and I've lost practice. How crazy is that?
It happens to all of us.
I know it does. This is weird. It doesn't really tell you how many minutes is it. They changed the settings all over the place on StreamYard. Okay, well, that kind of sucks for me. But
I see it's live, going on 28 seconds now.
Really, it says it to you, but it doesn't say it to me. That's really crazy.
That's crazy, yeah.
Oh yeah, there it is. It says 5 seconds now. That's really crazy. That's the delay. Okay, I'm gonna put you on mute and yeah. Hi folks, thank you again for coming on to Back to Basics. We're almost done with Season 3 and today we're going to go and speak with Chris Miles, right? And we're going to talk about the passive income, the money ripple, and that's what he's all about. And we're going to find out what that means when we get onto the show today. But there's one thing that I do want to ask him is, how important is money? Well, very important, isn't it? So why don't we go and speak with Chris and let's stop talking to me and get to know him better as to who, why, and what Chris is all about. So, Chris, how are you? And thanks for coming to Back to Basics.
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you again, Chris, for coming here. But before we get into the ripple effect or the passive income and all that fun stuff we're going to talk about, what does Back to Basic mean to you?
It really means understanding the fundamentals. You got to know the fundamentals. You got to know how to make things work because if you don't master those, you're going to mess up everything else. Give you an example. I was playing chess with my wife. She beat me in 3 moves, all because I got messed up on just one basic move, one fundamental that made it easy for her to put me in checkmate. And
Mhm.
that's the same thing it is here. Is that you understand the fundamentals, you master them, everything else builds upon that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again, Chris, for coming here, and definitely honored and very excited for this episode today. You were just talking about chess, and let me just ask you this: I've been playing chess for the longest time, and it seems like that I've made bad moves every single time. So take that same concept for money. How many bad moves is a bad move that you realize that you're kind of on the rock bottom and you need to start all over again?
Yeah, I've had to do that a few times myself. It's true. I mean, the good news, I mean, just like with chess, I mean, although other than, my wife uses this, was it the scholar move or whatever it's called, right? That she used on me and I psyched myself out. I think people do that with money too at times. You either psych yourself out or you try to get too complex with it. Or sometimes you end up just, you have the wrong perspective going in, right? There are definitely rules, just like any game. There are definitely rules of money as well. Unfortunately, and this is going to be contrary to it's similar to what you hear, but it's going to be contrary to everything you hear. Similarly, what we see out there is that people are not educated on the fundamentals. And I don't mean spend nothing, save, pay off debt. That's the kind of typical stuff you hear about, right? Those are really not those are really strategies. They're not fundamentals. They're not principles. Principles never change. Strategies can change depending on the situation and what's going on.
Hmm.
The problem is a lot of people have been told to do a certain strategy, which is usually to help make more money for banks and other institutions that make money off of your money.
Hmm.
Not actually what helps you become wealthy yourself.
Hmm.
That's where the real fundamentals come in play. That's why there's real natural principles that if you follow them and you actually understand them, and you don't have to be a financial genius to do it either. You just master the fundamentals, everything else falls into place just fine.
Yeah, thank you again for that. And let me ask you this, and it's going to be a crazy question or a dumb question. I really don't know, but what is the fundamentals that we need to follow? Obviously, save money is one of them, but what is the main thing? Because a lot of people, they still don't know, or they just don't know where to start, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's really three perspectives around money, right? There's the spender, and we all hear about that because they're the ones that get ripped on by the people in the media, by the financial experts. They rip on the spenders. It's easy come, easy go. Naturally, they hyper focus on income, yet ignore the expenses. But they live in a place of scarcity. Their perspective comes from a place of not enough. They can't make enough, and that's why they always have to keep hustling to make the next dollar.
Hmm.
But the second perspective is also in scarcity and also very destructive. And that's the saver. And that's the person that you can never pay off debt fast enough. They can never save enough. It's never enough for them. These are the people you do see in the media. These are the Dave Ramseys of the world. These are the people like the Susie Ormans. These are the people that are teaching people about what's supposed to be wise money principles, right? But they don't teach principles. They teach strategies. When they say save money, that's a strategy. Pay off debt, that's a strategy. But the principle, really what they should be talking about is living within your means. Or expanding your means so that you can actually live within them more easily, right?
Hmm.
They don't
Hmm.
talk always about how do I keep increasing income so that I don't have to worry about trying to live on rice and beans and cut out that latte and all
Of
those
course.
other things. They don't really go into that. They don't really go into the cause of what creates more money.
Hmm.
That's what a steward does. So
Hmm.
see, understand that the spender and the savers both live in scarcity. It's never enough, and they can never become truly free. Even the saver becomes debt free and they save millions of dollars, they'll feel like it's never enough. They will always feel like they just have to keep saving. They can't turn it off. That switch just never goes off, and they're
Hmm.
always in bondage to their own mindset.
Hmm.
The steward, however, takes the best of the spender and the saver and puts it into one. Because the truth is, money is meant to be used. It's not meant to be hoarded away like everybody tells you. That's what banks want you to do. They want you to hoard money away as a depositor so that they can then leverage 6 to 10 times that amount of money and use it to borrow and lend it out to everybody else, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
That's what they're doing with the money. They're becoming wise stewards of your money. They're telling you to sit on it, park it, and let's leave it there forever.
Hmm.
That is how you know marketing, billions of dollars of marketing has duped you completely.
Hmm.
But a steward doesn't do that. Now, they might utilize banks, they might use institutions, but they use it with the rules in their favor. They turn the tables around. They want that money to be used in a way that comes back to them. They want that money to be able to grow and increase without them having to scrimp and save. They're always about expansion and trying to create more with it and in a way that betters people's lives.
Hmm.
And you asked about what principles there are. I mean, besides understanding that there's a principle of stewardship that has to be there, and
Hmm.
it's there in the saver
Hmm.
teachings as well, but it's
Hmm.
it's just done from a non-abundant standpoint. It's done from a place of you'll never have enough, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Even as a financial advisor, when I did that over 20 years ago, as that traditional mainstream advisor, it was always about you need to save more. And oh yeah, by the way, the stock market stinks. It doesn't really return as much as I say it does, and inflation is higher than I said it was, and taxes are not necessarily your friend either. But hey, just keep saving, and eventually you'll get there. While the evidence doesn't show that. So when you're looking at real principles, things like, for example, what's the cause of money? This is what changed my perspective. Now, I'll give you a little perspective. I was a financial advisor, the traditional mainstream kind of guy you saw. I did that for several years. And then I remember the person that inspired me to become that penny pinching saver was my dad, right?
Hmm.
He was the guy that saved everything. He was cheap. He didn't want to spend money. He was very depression era mentality. And then, of course, eventually, a few years into my financial advising business, he said, "Chris, when are you going to advise me?" So I sit down with him at his table, and as we're talking about his money, and it's the first time I ever seen him open up his finances. He always kept it secret. And as I see all of his finances, and I said, "Okay, Dad, it looks like you've been max funding your 401k like you should be. You've paid off all your debt." He paid off his house in 18 years. He was very proud of that. And I said, "Even though you're debt free and you've been saving your money in your 401k, Dad, you're 61 years old. I got to be honest with you. You better hope you die in 5 years
Hmm.
because that's when you're going to run out of money if you try to retire today."
Hmm.
That wasn't what he wanted to hear, especially from a guy that sacrificed and saved his entire life to then be told, "You got 5 years to live." Not from a health standpoint, but from a financial health standpoint.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that really bugged him. And it bugged me even more because when he asked me, "Chris, what do I do?" I said, "I don't know. You did everything right." And it became apparent because a few weeks later, I'm speaking with one of my friends who I actually trained to be a financial advisor, left to become a real estate investor, and he's making way more money. Him and his dad are partnering on deals. His dad has doubled his income as a professor at the local university.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, well, how's that possible? That's too good to be true.
Hmm.
And he said, well, Chris, how many of your clients are really financially free? Like where they don't worry about money? I
Hmm.
said, well, none. Okay, how about this, Chris? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning, but
Hmm.
actually putting your money in these mutual funds?
Hmm. Hmm.
And when I looked around the office, this was about the mid 2000s. I looked around, there's guys working there since the late 1970s and still could not retire. Not
Hmm.
because they loved it, but because
Hmm.
they couldn't. And that's when it became apparent. The evidence was there. I said, this is crap. It doesn't work.
Hmm.
And so that's where I started taking more of an investor perspective, the steward mentality. One of those principles, for example, to get back to that point, was that I first learned that it really helped break the chains for me, where money became formulaic, was that dollars follow value. Dollars follow the value you create for other people.
Hmm.
So instead of asking, how do I make more money? Because that's not the right question. People have asked that for generations and they
Hmm.
remain broke.
Hmm.
The real question is, what causes money? What causes money is value creation. How do I provide more value in a way that they want to exchange dollars for that value? And people
Hmm.
will always exchange to receive something they believe is worth more. So
Hmm.
if I want to receive more dollars, I need to figure out, how do I exchange more value? How do I give people more of what they want? Kind of like Jim Rohn says, if you want to get more of what you want, help others get what they want. It's the same thing here. But if you want it to monetarily be a benefit, find ways to keep solving problems, adding value, or serving people in such a way that money is just the natural receipt of service that was
Hmm.
rendered.
Hmm.
That for me completely changed my perspective about money. It no longer became a thing that was scarce, like what my dad taught me, right? It
Hmm.
wasn't a scarce thing. It was actually something that was very formulaic. It was predictable because as I started to ask different questions, I started to ask, like, well, how can I create a win-win for people? And I started asking that. The funny thing is, I remember I was asking that more in relation to my business, that I was getting out of. I actually quit being a financial advisor. I was still a mortgage broker. And I
Hmm.
remember one of my friends, he asked me, he said, Chris, do you like doing mortgages? I said, well, I like teaching them, but I hate paperwork. Chris, find someone who likes doing that. Now, in a scarcity perspective, I didn't want to share business, right? Because,
Hmm.
hey, there's just not enough.
Hmm.
But when I broke out of that and realized, well, there's more than enough and to spare, and I realized there is an abundance of opportunities, I said, all right, I'm going to start farming that out. And I went to a guy, found a guy in my office that likes doing paperwork. And I said, if we split this 50-50, are you okay with that? He says, they're ready to go. Like you just send them to me and they're ready to do a mortgage. Yes. I'll talk to him probably for like 30 minutes and then say, go talk to you. He says,
Hmm.
I love it. Let's do it. And so I went from working several hours a week, all of a sudden to working like maybe a half hour with people and then getting a check in the mail for like 1,000 or $2,000.
But
It
Chris,
wasn't about
I
the
mean,
amount
what?
of
And,
time.
and sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
what you did there is that you splitted your hard skill into soft skill, didn't you?
Yeah.
Or the other way around, really. And then you said to yourself and or your friend, and you divided work. So I think it's working harder or smarter. I mean, that's something that people need to understand. So sorry to interrupt you. You carry on, but I wanted to say that before I move forward.
You actually made my point for me. That's perfect. Because that's one thing I often say is it's not about working harder. And I found later on, it's not just about working smarter, it's about working right. Because
Mm,
you can't work smart and then do the wrong thing, right? You can study it up, but if you applying, like you said, the wrong principles or you're doing the wrong strategies, you won't get the results that you were hoping for. And
mm,
so it kind of goes along with smarter. It's doing it in the right way. And that's what I was finding out is that these principles, when I stopped asking, how do I make more money? And instead, how can I serve this person? How can I solve a problem for them? How can I give them what they want? How can I
mm,
create a win-win for people?
mm,
I went from a transactional kind of a zero sum game win lose mentality all of a sudden to a how do we create this win win for everybody?
mm,
And I not only did it with that business, but there's even I realized I kind of had an aha moment. I said, wait, I can do that with other things. What if
mm,
there's this wholesale jeweler I've been sending business to. Maybe they have a referral kickback. And
mm,
they did. They had, they paid a 5% commission if I sent somebody to them, which was a benefit for the person I sent them to because they would save, usually they would pay about a third of the cost for a diamond ring if they were trying to get married
mm,
versus trying to buy it from a typical retailer or mall. This is a
mm,
wholesale jeweler. So
mm,
I'd send it to them. I'd give a huge win for them that my friends would be ecstatic because they're getting married and they saved a ton of money. And then the business is ecstatic because they got business. And then they sent me a little thank you check, right?
right.
And when I started to have that mentality, and even with an investing, I mean, even if you try to do a rental for real estate, understanding that you're trying to provide a value or a service. You're not a slumlord. You're not slumdog millionaire, right? You're not trying to provide this bad, you're trying to provide a real housing, a real opportunity for people.
Hmm.
And you start to come from that perspective, all of a sudden making money is a virtuous thing, not an evil thing. Like so
Hmm.
many people in general public have made it to be vilified, even in TVs and movie.
Hmm.
It's hardly ever the government official. I mean, although it's become more popular lately, but it's almost always some rich billionaire that's trying to screw people over and destroy lives, right?
Hmm.
There's always something like that, some kind of agenda that's there because people believe that, people with money are corrupt. But
Hmm.
in truth, for the most part, the vast majority, I'm not saying there's not exceptions to the rule, but for the vast majority, the people that have become millionaires and billionaires are those that become very good at saying, what do people need or want? And how can I solve that for them? How can I
Hmm.
give them what they want?
Hmm.
And that's what they do.
Yeah, but Chris, thank you again for explaining that, and you shared a lot of great nuggets, which actually I knew most of it, but there's a lot of people who don't know what you know and what I know. And thank you again for that. And I want to share a story. There's a friend of mine who's going through some hardship at work,
Mm,
and but he's very very good in construction work, but he likes to explain to people. But he's getting a little older, so I advised him, why don't you hire people and you can be a consultant
yeah.
for your own business and do half and half. So he's like, well, that's not a bad idea. And guess what happened, Chris? He actually got his first client a few days ago.
Mhm.
So it's all about opening people's mind up to see that if this is a right way or wrong way, but that's up to him or her to decide.
Yeah.
But people need to open up a little instead of being a closed-minded person when it comes to work and income. Is that a right statement, do you think?
Absolutely. It's just one of many ways to share wealth, right?
Mm.
There's another principle that I often don't share on other podcasts, but I'll share on yours here. Is that one that I've really internalized, it's become popular for me, is that exchange creates wealth, right? Even in the economy, even in the markets and everything else, the faster the rate of money exchanging between people's hands, the more prosperous everybody becomes. If you want to see Great Depression, the best way to see that is when there were people were living in fear, they held on to their money out of fear. They didn't exchange it. They were scared to lose it. So they held on and tried to spend as little as they could so they make it last.
Hmm.
The problem is when somebody spends no money or very little money at all, that means that business that they're spending money towards doesn't make money. And if they don't make money, they lay off people. And if they lay off those people, they don't make money. And as a result, they don't pay your work. And then you get laid off, right?
Mm.
It creates this vicious cycle when there's that kind of scarcity involved. So when people get into fear, that's why it becomes literally like a depression, not just mentally and emotionally, but also from a financial standpoint. The
So, Chris,
fastest way for growth is to create more exchange between people to get that money flowing freely.
with your example, you're saying that I should be spending more to get more back. Is that what you're saying?
That's the better way to spend it, right? Definitely. I mean, whether you know it or not, subconsciously, we never want to spend money to get something less, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you spend money on, this is why you can never say you got ripped off if there was an honest transaction that happened.
Mm.
For example, if someone went to the store and bought, say, an $80 pair of jeans,
Mm.
and then all of a sudden, and you exchange that. If you bought the $80 pair of jeans, it means that you believe those jeans were worth at least a penny more than 80 bucks, or you
Mm.
wouldn't pay it. You'd say, nope, not worth it.
Mm.
The problem is some people say, well, wait, those jeans went on sale and now they're $40. I was ripped off.
Mm.
No, because you still believe they're worth at least $80, which is why you spent it. In fact, the one thing we know it's not worth, because if the store accepted 80 bucks, they think it's worth less.
Mm.
That's why the one thing we know those jeans aren't worth is 80 bucks.
Mm.
But even if they went down to 40 bucks, doesn't matter. You still believe they were worth more, and therefore you were not ripped off in that transaction. And
Mm.
some people don't like to hear that. They like to go into that victim mentality thinking that somehow empowers them or gives them an excuse for why they're struggling. But the
Mm.
truth is that you're just not taught and trained, because I wasn't either. Even as a financial advisor, I mean, that talk about a scarcity industry. That industry is full of scarcity. They don't get money at all.
Mm.
Yet those are the people that supposedly are supposed to be the experts teaching you. And
Mm.
so you got to understand that these principles do work. And if you really understand them, understand how that really plays in your
Mm.
life becomes a very different, it really opens up a whole new perspective that allows you to be able to become more prosperous.
Yeah, Chris, thank you again for explaining that. And here's a small tip for anyone, whoever's listening here on my show. Um, let's say if there's a consulting gig that you have, and you're charging people $200. You're inviting Chris. Let's say I'm giving you an example of Chris. I invite him to a coffee shop. I spent $4 on Chris. I'm gonna get $160 back from 190, actually 196 back from Chris, because he's actually paying for those $200 of consulting fee. So it's not, it's more of investing on your client because you know you're going to get your value back.
Mhm.
Is that a good statement, you think?
That's what stewards do, right? Stewards know that they always want to make more with what they have. They want to take whatever they were able to purchase or be able to use and make something more from it.
Yeah, yeah. Chris, thank you again for explaining that. So, there's a new segment that we have started on season three, and it's a rapid fire round. There's some words and sentences, and hopefully you'll won't get challenged by me. How about that?
Hey, challenging or not, let's do it.
Okay. Okay. So the first word, or as to say, the phase is chess versus checkers.
I love checkers more.
Okay. Um, needs versus wants.
Always wants.
Okay. Spender versus saver.
Is there a neither? I can say steward.
Okay. Interest versus principal.
Interest.
Okay. Dollar versus value.
Value.
Money versus ripple.
Ripple all the way.
Okay. Hardship, hard skills versus soft skills.
Mm. I would say soft skills.
Okay. Exchange wealth.
Yes.
Okay.
Was that two separate words? Was that either or? I was
Yeah.
like, yes, both.
Okay. Mainstream financial. Finish that sentence off.
Mainstream financial advice is broken.
Okay. I am a financial advisor because.
I'm a financial advisor because I'm not legally, but I am a financial mentor.
Okay. Uh, mentor versus advisor.
There you go, mentor.
Okay. Out of the three principles that you talked about, the financial fundamentals, which one you would pick?
Say that again. Which one I have? What?
Out of the three fundamentals
Mhm.
that we talked about, which one would you pick? The spender, the saver, or the?
The steward.
Mhm.
Definitely the steward.
Okay. Uh, now, if you had to choose Marvel versus DC, which one would you pick?
Marvel all the way.
Okay. Now, let's finish the sentence. Chris is.
Free.
Okay. And back to basics is.
Essential.
Cool. Chris, thank you again for playing the rapid fire round. Hopefully, I didn't really stomp you on certain things. There's few things that we challenge people, the thought process. Now, the main question that I have for you is why Marvel and why not DC?
I think DC has the potential, but I think the way I see Marvel, the story is being told and unraveled. Um, there's always more depth of character. I think that's the thing I like to look for.
Hmm.
Um, DC, I root for DC though, just so you know, because I love a lot of the characters from DC, but definitely when it comes to storytelling and building out a persona, I think Marvel's done a better job of that.
Okay, okay. Because I thought that was a money answer, but I guess it's not. So thank you again for that. Chris, thank you again for coming on to Back to Basics and sharing all the nuggets that you have here. But let me ask you this. When people they have money in their bank accounts, and I'm pretty sure whoever's listening right now, let's assume they have a savings account. Let's assume that they have a certain level of savings account, but they have a huge balance on their credit cards,
Mm,
and they don't want to pay off those credit cards. And when you just mentioned about the interest versus principal, and you said interest, the credit card interest goes up, right? So Can you differentiate between the two answers, if you don't mind, and explain to people that why interest and not principal, and go from there?
Yeah, it's like this when it comes to when we're talking about debt specifically, and I was thinking about investing when I was thinking of interest, but even with when it comes to debt or loans, the thing is the balance is not so much as important as the payment, right?
Mm,
Because even the interest, even in that case, sometimes you can have a low interest but a high payment, and that can create a lot of stress.
mm,
Lack of cash flow is what creates stress, right? When you have less money, really less money coming in than what's going out, that's the stress is. Now, when it comes to dealing with interest, if it's a high interest rate and that's creating a lot of cash flow stress, that might be your best investment is paying off that credit card. And it doesn't mean that credit cards again. It's always based on stewardship, right? Because I've had some friends that went and used credit cards to buy real estate, and then they made tens of millions of dollars doing that. Why? Because they knew what they were doing. That's
mm,
the same thing the banks do, right? The banks, if they know what they're doing and they're wise with their money, they make a lot more. That's why they can loan out more money than what they have in their own possession.
mm,
For most people, that's not the case. They're not wise stewards of their money. So for most people, if you were to ask me, what should the general public do? Pay off that credit card, right? Pay it off, free up the cash flow, take that cash flow and use that to start building up your savings. Get to that point. Now, do I have a credit card? Yeah, but I'll pay it off every month. I'll get all those points. I love the fact I can fly for free almost anywhere. I love that. But again, I had to have a good discipline and stewardship to do that. So that's the same thing I would say for them as well is that it always comes back to really what creates the most return for you. It could be paying off that credit card in most people's cases, but there are a few, if they're a wise steward, not a gambler. Stewards are not gamblers. They actually like low risk to create high returns.
mhm.
If you're in that category as a steward, then possibly investing could be the best thing you've done. That's why I didn't pay off a student loan for 15 years because I made literally hundreds of thousands of dollars more than paying on the interest of that student loan.
Yeah, thank you again for that, and that's why they call it a revolving credit, isn't it? Because you pay it off, you start again, and you pay it off again. Is that the right analogy?
Yeah, exactly. It's always revolving, right? Especially if you pay it off and start again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Chris, thank you again for coming on to Back to Basics and sharing all the nuggets. And you and I chatted many times, and it seems like you and I are on the same boat when it comes to money, when it comes to interest or principles and paying off and in passive income. But there's one thing that I'd want to ask you, Chris, before you leave. How is your journey on Back to Basics? And if you have any last comments to all my Back to Basic listeners.
Yeah, I think my only regret is that we never really got to talk much about passive income, did we? And that's the
Oh, well,
sexy stuff.
oh my God.
But
Okay.
but I'll tell you the truth is, I mean,
Yeah,
that could be a whole episode by itself. But the
sure.
truth is, like, if you understand some of these basics, when you get to the point of passive income, when you have enough savings, it's awesome. So, no, this show we talked about things. The great thing is, you got things out of me that most hosts never get, and so this right now on this show, you've got more value than what you'd probably get sometimes even from my own show.
Hmm. Well, thank you again for that, and definitely we'll do a Chris Point 2.0 version on passive income, and hopefully you and I can chat more about that because it seems like a lot of people they want to talk about passive income, and I think we should. Why don't we do that, right? And we'll take that offline and make that happen for everyone. But Chris, thank you again for coming on to the show, and hopefully you and I will chat again and chat again even after that when it comes to season 4 of Back to Basics.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you again. Hey guys, thank you again for that. Today we spoke with Chris and we talked about the best, the incomes, the passive incomes, very little of it. But there's one thing that we did talk about is that money is very important in our lives. There's one thing that we don't talk about enough. Now, do we pay things off? Sure. But the thing is that how do we save? Do we want to save or do you want to spend or do you want to be a steward, right? So now that's one thing that I've learned is that there are 3 S's in your world and it depends on your 3 S's how you want to be. Now, as usual, as always, there's a quote of the day from Back to Basics, and the quote of the day is, being rich is having money. Being wealthy is having time. Now, if you have time, you can be wealth at any time. Now, be wise, be well, and be great. And that's what you want to do with your money. Now, as usual, as always, what do we always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, we're almost over with season 3. Please comment and rate the show because I really need your support and love. So thank you again. Take care. God bless. And I will see you next week on Back to Basics. How was that, Chris?
That was great.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was like, man, we got some deep stuff, but I'm like, I don't want to. I want to take it away because it literally is the basic stuff that I often don't talk about because people always want to skip to the sexy, right?
Yeah. So we forgot the sexy part. Is that what it is? Hi guys, thank you again for tuning in to Back to Basics and listening to the excellent episode that we had today with our guest. You know, with your love and support, we do need you to at least rate our show, review our show, because it does make us stronger day by day, week by week, as I usually say on my episodes. And there are 3 things in this episode that it makes a hit for me, which is the content, the guest, and definitely the host. So guys, take care, God bless, and remember, everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care, God bless, and see you next time on Back to Basics.